Hi everyone, and welcome to Investment Pill. I'm glad you're here because today we're covering a company that I genuinely think is one of the most fascinating business stories of the last 30 years. Not just because of the numbers, though trust me, the numbers are wild, but because of how they got there. Today, we're talking about Nvidia. You've probably heard the name. Maybe you've seen it on a gaming PC, or maybe you've caught it in the headlines every other week because of AI. But I want to tell you the full story, from the very beginning, when three guys sat down at a diner with $40,000 and a crazy idea, all the way to the moment that company became the most valuable in human history. We're going to cover where they started, how they almost didn't survive, what they actually do, and how they make their money, and what the numbers look like today. And as always, nothing here is financial advice. We're here to understand the business together. What you do with that knowledge is entirely up to you. All right, let's get into it. Imagine three guys walk into a Denny's diner in San Jose, California. They split some pancakes, scribble some ideas on a napkin, and agree to start a company together. They've got $40,000 between them. That's it. Fast forward 30 years. And that company is now worth over $5 trillion. With a T, $5 trillion. That's more than the entire GDP of Japan. It's the first company in history to ever hit that number. And it didn't get there by making phones, or running social media, or selling you stuff online. It got there by making a chip, a tiny piece of silicon that almost no one outside of gaming had heard of, until suddenly it became the most important piece of hardware on planet Earth. So here's the question we're going to answer today. How does a company that nearly went bankrupt in its first 5 years end up at the absolute center of the AI revolution? And what exactly does Nvidia actually do that makes it so hard to replace? We'll get to both of those. But first, we need to talk about a moment in 1997 when this whole story almost ended before it even started. Okay, so 1993. Jensen Huang is a 30-year-old engineer working at a chip company. He's got this obsession. Computers are terrible at drawing things. Like, rendering graphics in real time was painfully slow. He thought there had to be a better way. So he calls up two friends, Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, and the three of them meet at a Denny's in East San Jose. No fancy boardroom, just coffee, pancakes, and a crazy idea. They pool $40,000 and start Nvidia. Their first product launches in 1995. It's called the NV1, and it flops hard. They backed the wrong technology standard for how graphics should be rendered, and the market basically said, no thanks. So now they've burned through most of their money, they've got a failed product, and they're a tiny startup going up against companies like Intel and 3DFX, who are way bigger and way better funded. By 1997, just 4 years in, Nvidia is 1 month away from running out of money. 1 month. That's not a metaphor. The company was weeks from insolvency, unable to make payroll. But then something changed. They shipped a new chip, the Riva 128, and it was fast, genuinely faster than anything else on the market. They sold 1 million units in 4 months. The company survived. 2 years later, in 1999, they launched the GeForce 256 and coined the term GPU, Graphics Processing Unit. They also went public on the NASDAQ that same year. Things were looking good. But here's the part that most people gloss over, the decision that actually changed everything. In 2006, Nvidia made a massive bet. They invested over $1 billion to build something called CUDA. It's a software platform that lets developers use Nvidia's graphics chips not just for gaming, but for any kind of heavy-duty number crunching. Scientific simulations, weather modeling, eventually, AI. At the time, a lot of people thought it was a weird idea. GPU were for games. Why would anyone use them for research? We'll come back to exactly why that bet paid off. But first, let's talk about how Nvidia actually makes its money today, because it's not what most people expect. Here's the simplest way to think about Nvidia. They design the world's most powerful chips for processing information, and they write the software that makes those chips actually useful. Notice I said design, not manufacture. Nvidia doesn't have its own factories. They're what's called a fabless company. They draw up the blueprints, then hand them off to a manufacturing partner called TSMC in Taiwan to actually build the chips. This keeps Nvidia lean and focused on the hard part, the design and the software. So where does the money come from? There are a few streams. The biggest one, by a mile, is the data center business. Think about every major tech company running AI right now. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta. They need enormous amounts of computing power to train and run their AI models. The chips they reach for, overwhelmingly, are Nvidia's. Specifically, chips like the H100, the H200, and now the Blackwell B200. These are not cheap. Some of the big rack systems cost over $3 million each. And these companies are buying thousands of them. In the most recent financial year, the data center segment alone brought in nearly $194 billion. That's about 90% of all Nvidia's revenue coming from one segment. But here's the thing, and this is where we come back to that 2006 CUDA bet. Hardware can be copied. If you're a competitor and you want to build a fast chip, you can hire smart engineers and eventually get there. AMD has tried. Google has built its own chips. Amazon has too. So, why is it so hard to dethrone Nvidia? The answer is CUDA. That software platform they built almost 20 years ago now has over 4 million developers writing code on it. There are more than 3,000 applications and libraries that run on CUDA. Every major AI framework, PyTorch, TensorFlow, JAX, was built with CUDA in mind. The entire AI research world has essentially standardized on Nvidia's software. Think of it like this. Imagine if every road in the world was built specifically for one type of tire. You could technically design a different car, but if your tires don't fit the roads, nobody's going to buy your car. That's what CUDA is. It's the road system, and Nvidia built it. Switching away from Nvidia doesn't just mean buying different hardware. It means rewriting your entire software stack, retraining your engineering teams, and potentially slowing down your AI development by years. Most companies don't want to risk that. Beyond hardware and CUDA, Nvidia also makes money through networking equipment, the cables and switches that connect all these chips together inside massive data centers. They picked that up through an acquisition, and it now brings in over $11 billion a year on its own. They also have a growing software subscription business, where companies pay to access Nvidia's AI tools and enterprise software. All right, let's talk numbers, and I promise I'm keeping this simple. In their most recent financial year, Nvidia brought in $215.9 billion in revenue. To put that in perspective, 3 years earlier, in 2023, they made $27 billion. So in 3 years, revenue grew by roughly 8 times. That kind of growth rate is almost unheard of for a company this size. But revenue is just the top line. What really matters is how much they actually keep. And this is where it gets wild. For every dollar of revenue Nvidia brings in, they keep about 56 cents as net profit. That's called a net margin, the percentage of your sales that turns into actual profit. And 56% is extraordinary. For comparison, Apple, one of the most profitable companies on earth, typically keeps around 25 cents of every dollar. Nvidia is keeping more than double that. 2 more numbers worth noting. First, free cash flow hit $96.7 billion last year. Free cash flow, that's the actual cash the business generates after paying for everything it needs to operate and invest, is often considered a better measure of financial health than profit alone, because it's harder to fake. nearly $97 billion in real cash generated in a single year. Second, the company sits on a net cash position of about $54 billion. That means if you added up all their cash and investments and subtracted all their debt, they'd still have $54 billion left over. They owe almost nothing relative to what they own. Now, none of these numbers tell you whether the stock is a good buy or a bad buy. That's genuinely not what we're here to do. But what they do tell you is the story of a business that has found an incredibly profitable position, at least for now, right at the center of a massive technology shift. The big question hanging over all of this is, how long does it last? Those four big tech companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, together make up over 60% of Nvidia's revenue. And all four of them are quietly building their own custom chips to reduce how much they rely on Nvidia. That's a risk worth watching. There's another risk that's already hitting the bottom line. The US government has placed export restrictions on some of Nvidia's most advanced AI chips, limiting what can be sold into China. That's not a hypothetical. Nvidia has already reported over $5.5 billion in financial impact from those controls, and the restrictions remain in place. It's an ongoing regulatory situation that could affect future revenue, depending on how US-China trade policy evolves. Here's the thing that sticks with me about Nvidia. The most valuable part of the business isn't the hardware. It's the software ecosystem that took 20 years to build. The CUDA platform isn't just a product. It's a set of habits, workflows, and tools that millions of developers rely on every single day. That kind of stickiness is rare, and it came from a bet that, at the time, looked pretty questionable. Jensen Huang invested $1 billion in developer software in 2006 when Nvidia was still mainly known as a gaming chip company. Most people didn't see the connection, but that long-term thinking is exactly what turned a Denny's napkin idea into the most valuable company in history. What's worth watching isn't just Nvidia's next chip. It's whether that software moat holds as the AI era matures, and whether the companies that depend on Nvidia today will eventually build their way around it. That's the real story, not just the numbers. The 20-year decision that nobody talked about, that quietly became everything. Just a reminder, nothing in this video is financial advice. We're here to learn about businesses together, not tell you what to do with your money. Always do your own research.